The first thing I noticed was the smell. It was not the warm scent of incense or the faint sweetness of candle wax. It was sharp, metallic, and heavy, as if the air itself carried blood. The reliquary beneath St. Anthony's Church in Louisiana did not smell like holiness. It smelled like iron chains and old wounds. Father Elias Monroe led me down the narrow stairs with a lantern held high. His face was carved by age and shadow, deep lines across his cheeks and forehead, his eyes dark pools that had seen too much. I had met many priests in my years of teaching, but there was something different in him. He did not carry faith like a shield, he carried it like a burden. "Michael," he said softly, "you must read the rules before you sit in this place. You must repeat them each night until they are burned into you." At the bottom of the stairwell, the reliquary opened like a wound. Stone walls glistened with moisture. Rows of glass cases stood in silence, each holding relics, bones, scraps of cloth, shards of wood. Small plaques labeled each item in gold letters: St. Amadeus, St. Lucia, St. Reginald. Their names stared at me through the glass, but the air around them pressed cold against my skin. In the far wall, a silver plaque gleamed. The words were carved deep, as if the chisel had been driven with rage. I stepped close. My reflection wavered in the metal, distorted. The rules of the relics. 1. Never touch the relics with bare hands. 2. Do not let the reliquary doors open after midnight. 3. If you hear chanting, do not join in. 4. If any relic bleeds, clean it with salt water only. 5. Do not allow mirrors or reflections inside the reliquary. 6. Leave before the morning bells ring. When I finished reading, Father Monroe pressed a vial of salt water into my hand. The glass was cold, the liquid cloudy. "This will be with you always," he said. "Follow every word of the plaque. Do not invent new rules. Do not ask why they exist. Simply obey." I turned toward him. "And if I do not?" His eyes narrowed. "Then you will not last until dawn." I looked again at the relics. Some were bones, yellowed and thin, wrapped in velvet cloth. Some were scraps of garments, dark stains still visible along the fabric. One case held a fragment of wood, blackened, as though burned. Each item was supposed to be holy, proof of faith, evidence of God's hand in human history. Yet in that chamber, each relic looked less like proof and more like warning. I was once a teacher of religious history. I knew how relics had been used across centuries to anchor faith, to inspire the masses, to bind people to belief. But standing there in the reliquary, I felt no inspiration. I felt only dread. Father Monroe placed a hand on my shoulder. His grip was firm, almost desperate. "Michael, you must understand. You are not guarding relics. You are guarding silence. There is a difference." He left me then, climbing the stairs, the lantern's glow shrinking until the door above closed with a dull thud. I was alone with the relics, the silver plaque, and the rules that already felt like chains around my throat. I sat in the wooden chair, set in the center of the chamber. The air was thick, unmoving, pressing against my lungs. I tried to steady myself, to breathe evenly, but the smell of iron clung to every breath. At first, I only heard my heartbeat. Then, slowly, other sounds began to surface, a faint drip of water, the soft creak of wood from the cases, and then a whisper. It came from the far corner, where a glass case held a strip of cloth. The cloth was frayed, faded, but a dark stain spread across its center. At first, I thought the whisper was imagination, but it came again, a low murmur, in Latin. My years of teaching gave me enough to recognize the rhythm. It was a prayer. But the words were reversed, each syllable bent backward, as if the prayer had been turned inside out. Rule 3 struck my mind with force. If you hear chanting, do not join in. My lips moved anyway, not to speak, but to tremble. My tongue wanted to form the words, to match the rhythm, to echo the reversed prayer. I gripped the vial of salt water so hard I thought the glass might crack. The whisper faded. Silence returned, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of something waiting. I tried to distract myself, walking slowly along the rows of relics. Behind the glass, the bones looked fragile, almost ordinary, but the plaques beneath them bore names that demanded reverence. St. Lucia, St. Reginald, St. Amadeus. Each name glimmered in gold, but I could not shake the thought, who were these people really? The plaque had warned me, never touch with bare hands. I leaned closer to one of the cases, the glass fogging slightly with my breath. The bones inside seemed to twitch, only once, only faintly. My heart jolted. I stumbled back, the vial nearly slipping from my grasp. The bones lay still again, quiet, unmoving. I forced myself into the chair once more. I repeated the rules aloud, every word echoing in the chamber. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the stone. Hours passed. My eyelids grew heavy. The air pressed down, thick and suffocating. I must have drifted, because when I opened my eyes, the lantern had dimmed, and the reliquary door groaned. I froze. The heavy wooden door at the top of the stairwell shifted against its hinges. Slowly, too slowly, it began to open. Rule 2 blazed in my mind. Do not let the reliquary doors open after midnight. But the door was moving, and I was in the chamber, trapped among bones and cloth and glass that no longer felt like cages, but like displays in a museum of lies. I gripped the vial of salt water and whispered aloud, not prayer, but the rules over and over. The door stilled. It did not close, but it did not open further. Then came the sound. Not a whisper this time, a low hum vibrating through the cases. The relics trembled in their glass boxes faintly, as if struck by unseen hands. One case cracked. A thin line spread across the glass. I rushed forward, instinct stronger than fear, and saw it. The strip of cloth inside was wet. A dark droplet formed, heavy and red. It slid down the fabric, staining it further. Blood. Rule 4. If any relic bleeds, clean it with salt water only. My hands shook as I opened the vial. The smell of salt rose sharp. I dipped a cloth and wiped across the glass. The blood smeared but did not vanish. It spread, thinner but wider, until the whole strip of cloth seemed soaked. Behind me, I heard footsteps. I spun, but no one was there. When I turned back, the glass was clean. The blood was gone. The cloth inside lay still, pale, innocent. My chest heaved. I stumbled back to the chair, clutching the empty vial. The rules had held for now, but I felt the reliquary breathing with me as if we were bound. Above, the faint toll of bells began. Dawn was near. Rule 6, leave before the morning bells ring. I climbed the stairs, my legs heavy, my lungs filled with the taste of iron. The door groaned shut behind me, and morning light spilled through the church windows. Father Monroe was waiting in the pews. He studied me with those dark eyes. You survived your first night. I handed him the empty vial. My hand shook. One of them bled. He closed his eyes, his face tightening with grief. They all bleed, Michael. That is why the rules exist. I stared at him, my voice rough. Who are they really? He opened his eyes, but he did not answer. He only whispered, "Obedience, Michael. That is all that matters." I walked out of the church into the pale dawn, but the whisper from the cloth followed me, soft, reversed, still echoing in my skull. The second night began with blood already in my memory. I could still see the dark droplets sliding down the cloth, thick and red, and I could still smell the salt that had failed to wash it away. Father Monroe said nothing more after dawn. He gave me another vial of salt water and sent me back to the rectory. I tried to sleep through the day, but sleep refused me. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the reliquary door shift against its hinges. Each time I heard the reversed prayer curling through my ears. When dusk fell, I felt like a man walking back into a wound that had never closed. I salted the threshold of the stairwell, dragging the line carefully across the stone. The grains shone pale in the lantern light, but already I doubted their strength. The reliquary seemed to wait for me, pressing air up the stairwell like a warning. As I entered, the smell struck me stronger than before. It was heavier, sharper, like iron freshly scraped. The glass cases stood in rows, shadows clinging to their edges. The silver plaque glowed faintly on the wall, demanding my obedience. I read the rules aloud again. My voice trembled at the edges, but I forced each word out. The echo that returned was higher than my voice, thinner, as though a child repeated me from somewhere unseen. I sat in the chair and tried to steady my breath. But the reliquary was not still. The cloth that had bled the night before looked pale again, but the air around it pulsed faintly, as though the glass case itself was breathing. I closed my eyes for a moment, gripping the rosary that Father Monroe had insisted I wear. That was when I heard it, a sound from above, faint but clear, footsteps across the church floor. Then, the creak of the stairwell door. Rule 2 hammered into my mind. Do not let the reliquary doors open after midnight. The door groaned again. I held my breath. But this time, it was not opening by itself. It was being pushed. The wooden door swung inward, and light spilled faintly down the stairwell. A figure appeared, cautious, moving step by step. It was not Father Monroe. It was not Bishop Vance. It was Clara Jensen. She carried a small basket of flowers, the same ones I had seen her place on graves in the churchyard. Her face was pale but determined, her eyes wide as she descended into the reliquary. "You cannot be here," I hissed, standing quickly. "I had to see," she whispered. "I had to know." Rule 6 echoed in my head. No outsider may enter the reliquary. I should have forced her back, should have dragged her up the stairs, but the words that came out of me were different. "Then do not touch anything. Stay by the door." She nodded, but her gaze was already locked on the relics. She moved closer to one of the glass cases. The flowers in her basket shook as her hands trembled. "Why are they locked away like this?" she asked softly. "Why does the air feel wrong?" I had no answer. My mouth opened, but nothing came. Then the whisper returned. From the same strip of cloth as before, a murmur rose, louder this time, no longer content to stay hidden. The Latin spilled into the air, twisted and reversed, its rhythm pressing against our ears. Clara gasped. "You hear it too," she said. The rules burned in me. Rule 3. If you hear chanting, do not join in. But Clara's lips moved almost unconsciously. The rhythm pulled at her, tugging her into its tide. "Stop!" I said sharply. I grabbed her wrist. "Do not repeat it." She blinked, shaken, her lips still forming half a word. Then she caught herself and bit down hard, breaking the spell. That was when another voice thundered from the stairwell. "Outsider!" Brother Nathaniel Cross stormed down the steps, his black robe swinging, his eyes ablaze. In one hand he held a chain of silver links, and in the other a book bound in leather. His glare landed on Clara, and fury twisted his face. "You brought her here!" he spat at me. "She came on her own," I said quickly. "You let her inside," he roared. "You broke the rule." He stepped toward Clara, raising the silver chain as though to strike. I moved between them without thinking. "Do not touch her," I growled. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. His voice dropped to a hiss. "Do not forget why you are here, Michael. You are here to guard the rules, not to question them. The moment you falter, you become part of what is caged." Clara clutched my sleeve, her voice trembling. "Why do you call it a cage? What is really kept here?" Nathaniel's jaw clenched. He turned his glare on her. "You will forget this place. If you speak of it, if you even whisper of it, Bishop Vance will see you silenced." Her face blanched, but her eyes stayed fixed on him with quiet defiance. Nathaniel shoved past me, dragging the silver chain across the cases as he moved. The relics rattled within their glass prisons, the bones clinking faintly, the scraps of cloth trembling. His voice rose in a chant of his own, fierce and commanding, drowning out the whispers. Then he was gone, up the stairs, the door slamming shut behind him. Silence returned, but it was heavier, bruised by anger. Clara turned to me, her eyes wide. "He knows," she whispered. "He knows what these really are." I swallowed, staring at the strip of cloth that had bled. The case was still, but I felt it watching. "We need to leave," I said. She hesitated. "Will you tell me the truth, Michael? What are they?" My throat tightened. I wanted to say saints. I wanted to say holy proof. But the word that rose in my mind was prisoners. I did not answer. We climbed the stairs together. The next morning, Father Monroe was waiting in the pews, as always. His face was weary, older than it had been the day before. "You let her in," he said quietly. I froze. "How do you know?" "The reliquary speaks when rules are broken," he murmured, "and now it will not be still until the price is paid." "She is innocent," I said. "She only wanted to understand." "Innocence does not matter here," Monroe said, his eyes sinking into shadow. "Only obedience matters." I wanted to argue, to shout at him, but my voice caught. My hand still smelled faintly of salt and iron. That night when I tried to sleep, dreams dragged me back into the reliquary. I saw Sarah. No, not Sarah, but Clara's face twisted into Sarah's voice. She whispered the reversed prayer, over and over, until my own lips began to move. I woke with sweat soaking my sheets, the echo of Latin still rolling in my ears. The rules were meant to protect me, they said. But as the nights passed, they felt less like protection and more like a leash. And now, with Clara drawn into the reliquary, I feared the leash was tightening, not around me, around us both. The reliquary did not wait for me to enter. The moment I set foot on the stone stairs for the third night, the air was already alive. The walls pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat in stone. The glass cases below rattled softly, as if something inside them had begun to stir. I salted the threshold, but the grains skittered across the floor as if blown back by unseen breath. My chest tightened. The plaque glowed faintly on the far wall, waiting for me. I read the rules aloud again, but the echo that came back was twisted. It repeated me, word for word, but the voice was not mine. I sat in the chair, the rosary heavy around my wrist. My hand still carried faint scars from where the beads had cut me. I tried to breathe steadily, but the reliquary pushed against my lungs with every inhale. Then the voices rose, not whispers this time. Chants, deep, layered, dozens of voices in Latin, spilling from the cases all at once. The rhythm was familiar, but the words bent backward, tangled into knots of sound. The air vibrated. My teeth hurt with the pressure. Rule 3 burned into me. If you hear chanting, do not join in. My lips trembled. My tongue moved without my will. I pressed my teeth together so hard my jaw ached. The chants grew louder, overlapping, until they were almost screams. Then, silence. The reliquary went still. The only sound was my own ragged breathing. I could not take more. At dawn I climbed the stairs. Father Elias Monroe was waiting in the sanctuary, his face paler than before, his hands trembling slightly as he folded them. "You heard them," he said. "Yes," I whispered. "You must not listen." His eyes met mine, fierce despite his age. Obedience is survival. "They are not saints," I said. My voice shook. "They are not holy. They chant like prisoners. Who are they really?" Monroe flinched. For a moment his face softened, grief etched into his wrinkles. But then he forced it away. "You ask too much. You must learn silence." Before I could press further, heavy footsteps echoed through the sanctuary. The doors opened wide. Bishop Leonard Vance entered. His presence filled the church like iron. tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit with a silver cross gleaming against his chest. His eyes were pale, sharp, cutting into me with a single glance. "This is the caretaker?" he asked Monroe. "Yes, Bishop," Monroe said quickly. "Michael Heron." Vance studied me with a cold smile. "I thank you for your service. Faith is fragile in this land. Without relics, without rules. People forget who commands holiness." My jaw clenched. "Holiness does not need chains." His eyes narrowed. "And yet here you are, kept alive by them. Do not mistake survival for understanding, Mr. Heron. You are not here to learn truth. You are here to preserve order." He turned to Monroe. "If he falters, replace him." Then he left, his footsteps striking the floor like hammers. Later that day, Clara found me behind the churchyard. She looked different, paler, her eyes wide, her hands clutching a bundle of old paper. "I went through my grandmother's chest," she said, her voice shook. "She worked for the church once." "She kept these hidden?" She handed me the papers. The pages were brittle, stained, written in Latin. I scanned the lines, my breath catching. They were rules, but not the rules I had read from the silver plaque. Guard the relics, but speak their names aloud each night. Keep flame after midnight to weaken their hold. Let outsiders witness so the truth spreads. At sunrise, look back to remember who is chained. I read them again, slowly. They were not rules of obedience. They were rules of remembrance. Clara's hands shook. She told me the priests changed them. She said the relics are not holy. They are prisoners. People who stood against the church, people who were silenced. My stomach twisted. The silver plaque in the reliquary was not protection. It was erasure. Before I could speak, heavy footsteps sounded behind us. Brother Nathaniel Cross emerged from the shadows, his face dark with fury. He snatched the pages from my hands, crumpling them in his grip. "These writings are forbidden," he spat. "They are poison. Do not let her corrupt you." Clara stood firm, her eyes blazing. "It is the truth. You know it." His hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to make her wince. I stepped between them, shoving him back. "Do not touch her," I said. Nathaniel's eyes burned into me. "You are weak. You let her lies infect you. The bishop will hear of this, and when he does, you will be silenced along with her." He turned and stormed back toward the church, the crumpled pages in his hand. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "He cannot bury the truth forever. You saw it, Michael. You heard them. They are not saints." I nodded slowly, the weight of it crushing me. That night when I returned to the reliquary, the cases trembled before I even spoke. The silver plaque gleamed, but the words etched into it seemed thinner, weaker. I read them aloud anyway, my voice hollow. The echo came back twisted, and then, from the cracked case of the cloth, a voice rose above the others, clear, human. "Remember my name." The plaque forbade me from reading the names carved in stone, from speaking them aloud. But the voice begged for it. My lips parted. The name glimmered in gold letters on the plaque beneath the case. My eyes traced it, my breath forming the first syllable. The air grew heavy. The reliquary seemed to lean closer, waiting, daring me. I shut my mouth before the word could escape. My heart thundered. The whisper faded. But the hunger of the reliquary only grew. The reliquary was no longer silent when I entered for the fourth night. The glass cases rattled softly, as though something inside them had grown restless. The silver plaque gleamed brighter than ever, each rule glowing like a wound cut into metal. I read the words aloud, but this time the echo that came back was laughter, high and thin, echoing like children mocking me from the dark. I sat in the chair, my body tense, the rosary biting into my wrist, the air pressed against my lungs. The relics did not wait for midnight. They were already awake. Then I heard footsteps above, firm and measured. The trapdoor creaked. Lantern lights spilled down the stairwell. Father Elias Monroe descended. his face pale, his hands trembling. Behind him came Bishop Leonard Vance, robes heavy, silver cross gleaming on his chest. Brother Nathaniel followed, carrying a basin of oil and a blade of silver. The reliquary seemed to recoil at their presence. The air grew colder. The cases rattled louder. "We begin tonight," Bishop Vance said, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "The relics bleed. They whisper. They must be purified before corruption spreads." Father Monroe's lips moved, but no words came. His eyes darted toward me, pleading silently. Nathaniel set the basin on the floor, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with fanatic fire. He held the blade with both hands, the silver etched with sigils that shimmered faintly in the lantern light. "What are you going to do?" I demanded. "Obedience requires sacrifice," Vance said coldly. "These relics were once holy, but their holiness has been tainted. We will burn the corruption from them. Fire and silver will cleanse." "They are not saints," I said. My voice shook, but I forced it louder. "They are prisoners, people you silenced." Vance's pale eyes turned on me, cold as stone. "You have listened to their lies. You are already compromised." "Compromised with truth," I shot back. His lips curled into a thin smile. "Truth is whatever keeps order. Lies are whatever threatens it. That is all you need to know." He turned to Nathaniel. "Begin." Nathaniel lifted the blade high. He moved toward the cracked case that had once bled, the strip of cloth trembling inside. "No," Clara's voice rang from the stairwell. She rushed down, clutching the crumpled papers her grandmother had left. Her eyes blazed with conviction. "You cannot destroy them. They are not demons. They are the silenced. The rules you carved are cages, not commandments." Nathaniel whirled on her, fury twisting his face. "Outsider, you defile this place with lies." "She is right," I said. My voice shook with urgency. "The rules were rewritten. They were meant to keep the truth alive. You twisted them to bury it." Father Monroe dropped to his knees, his voice trembling. "It is true. I saw the originals once. The rules were not to silence, but to remember. I stayed silent because I feared what would happen if I spoke." Bishop Vance struck him across the face with the silver cross. Monroe crumpled, blood spilling from his lip. "Silence is survival," Vance roared, "and survival is holiness." The reliquary shuddered. Cracks spread across the glass cases, bones rattled like teeth, cloths shifted as though stirred by unseen wind. A low hum filled the chamber, building, pressing into our skulls. Nathaniel raised the blade high again. He slashed downward, striking the cracked case. The glass exploded in shards. The cloth inside writhed, bleeding fresh, soaking the floor. The hum grew into a roar. The other cases shuddered violently. One by one they cracked, bones shifted, scraps of garments stirred, shards of wood glowed faintly with heat. "Stop this," Clara cried. "You are not cleansing. You are provoking." "They are demons," Nathaniel screamed. "They must burn." The reliquary floor split with a sharp crack. A line ran across the stone, spreading fast. Pale light leaked upward. The roar deepened, echoing like voices rising from beneath the earth. Bishop Vance lifted the basin of oil and flung it across the floor. Fire blossomed, golden and wild. The relics glowed within the flames, not consumed, but strengthened. Their whispers rose into words, clear and terrible. "Remember us." The words layered, dozens of voices, hundreds echoing from every case. I staggered, my ears ringing, my heart hammering. The reliquary pulsed with life. Nathaniel lunged at me, blade flashing. I caught his wrist. The silver burned against my skin, searing. We grappled, bodies crashing against the cases. Glass shattered around us, bones spilled onto the floor, clattering like rain. Clara screamed, clutching the papers to her chest, shielding them from the fire. Father Monroe crawled toward us, blood dripping down his chin. His voice cracked. "Forgive us. We caged you. We lied. Forgive us." Bishop Vance raised the silver cross high, shouting over the roar, "Do not listen! They are corruption itself! Strike them down!" But the voices only grew louder. "Remember us!" The chamber shook violently. Stones cracked, flames bent backward, sucked into the glow rising from the floor. Bones rattled, then rose, hovering, glowing faintly with pale light. Scraps of cloth lifted, swaying in unseen wind. The reliquary was alive, and it was no longer chained. Nathaniel's eyes widened with terror. He staggered back, the blade falling from his hands. "No, no, this cannot be!" Clara's voice rang clear through the chaos. "They are not demons. They are witnesses. You buried their truth, but they will not stay buried." I stared at the relics, at the glow, at the bones suspended in light. My chest heaved. My skin burned. The truth pressed into me, heavy, undeniable. The rules had never been protection. They had always been a cage, and the cage was breaking. The reliquary erupted with light. Bones rose from shattered cases, glowing faintly in the air. Cloths that had lain silent for centuries now writhed like living things, soaked in blood that refused to dry. The air was a roar, voices layered, chanting not backward now, but forward, clear, relentless. "Remember us." The fire that Bishop Vance had spread did not consume the relics. Instead, the flames bent, folding inward, drawn into the glow as if the relics themselves drank fire. Pale light pulsed from them, brighter with every second. Brother Nathaniel Cross fell to his knees, eyes wide with terror. He scrambled back, hands raised as if to ward off the light. "They are demons," he sobbed. "They are demons." The voices turned to him. "No, we are witnesses." The words struck him like a blow. He screamed, clutching his ears, his voice breaking. The rosary slipped from his wrist, beads scattering across the floor like spilled teeth. Bishop Vance raised the silver cross high, his face twisted with fury. "You will not deceive us. You are corruption. You are rot. I will silence you again." He plunged the cross into the light. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then the relic surged. Bones spun through the air, cloths wrapped around the cross, pulling it from his hands. The metal hissed, glowing red, then melted, dripping to the floor. Vance's scream split the chamber. Light seared across his skin, burning lines deep into his flesh. His eyes turned white, his mouth still open as the glow swallowed him. When it dimmed, nothing remained but ash. Father Elias Monroe lay on the floor, blood seeping from his temple. He reached a trembling hand toward the glow. "Forgive us," he whispered. "We called you demons. We caged you. Forgive us." The voices softened. "We do not seek revenge. We seek remembrance." The relics drifted toward him, surrounding him in pale light. His body relaxed, his face easing into peace for the first time since I had known him. He exhaled and did not inhale again. His body sank gently to the floor, but his expression remained serene. Clara Jensen stood at my side, clutching her grandmother's papers to her chest. Her eyes shone with tears, but not fear. "They are not monsters," she whispered. "They only want to be remembered." The glow turned toward me. Bones hovered, cloths swayed, shards of wood glimmered. The voices layered into one, rising together. "Michael Heron, keeper, witness. Do you see us?" My knees weakened. I staggered forward, my hands shaking. I looked into the light and saw faces. Not saints, not demons. Faces of men and women, young and old, lined with grief, lit with fire. Some wept, some stared in defiance. Some reached hands toward me, not to harm, but to beg. I saw one more face among them. Sarah, my wife. Her eyes glistened, filled with sorrow and love. Her lips moved, her voice rising above the others. "Do not forget me." Tears burned down my cheeks, my throat ached. I whispered, "I will not." The relic surged closer. The light engulfed me. My skin burned, my heart pounded, but the pain was not destruction. It was weight. The weight of memory pressed into me, filling every part of me until I could not tell where I ended and they began. Clara reached for me, her voice desperate. "Michael." I turned my head. My voice shook, but it was not only mine anymore. Dozens of voices spoke through me, layered, heavy. They are not relics. They are chains of guilt, and now I am their keeper. The glow flared. For a moment the reliquary was filled with light brighter than the sun. Then it collapsed inward. The bones dropped lifeless to the floor. The cloths fell limp. The glass was shattered, but silent. The reliquary was empty. I collapsed to my knees, gasping. The rosary hung broken from my wrist. Its beads cut into my flesh. My hand was smeared with blood that no salt water would ever clean. Clara knelt beside me, her hands gripping mine. What happened? Where are they? I looked into her eyes. Voices still whispered behind my thoughts, soft but unending. Sarah's among them. They would never leave me. "They are here," I said, pressing my hand to my chest. "They live now in me." The bells above rang, loud and clear. Morning had come. Rule 6, leave before the morning bells ring. But there was nothing left to guard, no relics, no rules, only the weight inside me. Clara helped me up the stairs. The sanctuary glowed with dawn. Dust drifted through beams of light. Bishop Vance was gone, burned to nothing. Father Monroe lay at peace. Nathaniel had fled into the night. I stepped out into the graveyard. The stones leaned in the morning sun. The flowers on the graves bent in the wind. But now I could hear them, not the whisper of wind, not the creak of trees. Voices, hundreds of voices, the dead, the silenced, all calling to be remembered. I closed my eyes and they spoke through me. "Do not forget. Do not forget." Clara's hand gripped mine tighter. Her voice was small but steady. "Then we will remember, together." The sun rose higher, casting gold across the church. But within me, the reliquary still pulsed. I was no longer a caretaker. I was no longer a teacher. I was a vessel of guilt, a keeper of truth. And when I speak now, you hear not only me, you hear all of them. So listen closely. Relics are not proof of holiness. They are proof of silence, proof of blood, proof of what was buried so faith could look pure. I am their witness, I am their chain, and now I am their voice.